the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Hail.
If you've got a tip for Melissa, a mystery that's mysterious, true secrets of true crimes you'd like the world to know about, how to legally justify beating the living crud out of one of those snotty geniuses at the Apple Store, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host. She loves to scream bloody murder about bloody murder, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. Oh, hold on. That's me screaming bloody murder.
I like the little gasp you did when you first came on.
It's just because I'm old.
That's awesome.
And I was moving.
Ah, okay.
And then I have to collect my breath when I move.
I see.
For the next movement.
Okay.
Speaking of
You're not old.
Kind of. Speaking of movements.
Yeah.
I'm going to refer to it as the quickening, which I just found out last night is not just a series of crappy films, science fiction films about Highlanders, but apparently that's the term in pregnancy when a mother first feels the movement of the fetus. That was told to me by almost a doctor, Sherry G. She's almost a doctor. But I'm going to refer to what apparently happened to you earlier this afternoon as the quickening, as you went in and out of the bathroom numerous times.
Oh, no, you're not doing this.
And then described what happened as smelling like burnt tires sprinkled with kimchi. That's all. I'm going to call it the quickening.
Boundaries, darling.
You called it a cleansing. I am very jealous.
Let's just say I could probably have a colonoscopy right now.
Without having the prep, because you've already prepped?
No prep needed.
No prep needed? Okay. I think everyone needed to know about that. That was...
Well, since you jumped in, I guess I waded in with you.
Well, it was... I dove... I didn't jump in. I dove in. Jumping is for sissies. Diving is for heroes.
And it was a very elegant dive, too.
Thank you. It was the jackknife. I perfected the jackknife dive. So I dove right in because you said it smelled like burning tires sprinkled with kimchi. And there was no way I was going to let that go by without letting everyone know what's going on.
A little garlic, too. A little more garlic than...
Okay, now you've pushed it too far.
Garlic powder.
Stop.
There's already garlic in the kimchi.
It now. Stop now. Okay. Once the garlic is mentioned, I can go no further. I can go no further. So I would love for this to have been a Golden State Killer update. I feel like we need that noise, news reporters like.
You know what I could get? I can't use the music,
you know what?
though. Darn it.
I have asked my producer to get me some shit, like some drops and stuff, and he's just really falling down on the job.
Well, I got some drops. I can't get that.
Okay, whatever. I don't care.
I've got
fine.
this one.
Wow.
I got that.
Bitterman, table for one.
I got this one.
I think the thing about you and your drops is that they go on perhaps 10 seconds too long.
Oh, this one doesn't. Say something kind of smart alecky, and I'll play this one.
I'm not sure I can really do that. I'm not good at smart aleck.
See, that's pretty short.
That just sounds like someone got goosed in the produce aisle. That's not... That's remarkably
it's
sad.
Like if somebody tries to be pompous or something, we can play her doing this. Where is she? She's gone. Oh, well.
Okay, good. See?
Oh, there she is.
That's just not even... Okay. We're done with the drops.
I got, you know what's great music
God.
for
No, I don't.
For the
What's
news?
great music for the news?
It's the theme from Cool Hand Luke.
Murphy Brown?
No, it's Cool Hand Luke, and they used to use it on Eyewitness News here, and all over the country. And but you can't use it because it's not pod safe. Yes.
Jenks, owe me a Coke. Okay, so I'm just going to do this. It's just a very short update. It's a Golden State Killer update. what happened this week is that he had an appearance on Thursday, July 11th at 1:35 p.m. Not that I have them all bookmarked on my calendar, but I do. And it was just about 90 seconds long. Of course, still no plea because he's never going to plea anything. He did stand for the entire 90 seconds, and he does look somewhat thinner. He's still not, wasting away to nothing because it's been, almost 3 months now that he's been, being held. And I don't get how long. I cannot get a solid goddamn answer. How long do you go not entering a plea? How long do you get to drag this shit out, you fucking monster?
That is an excellent question.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So he stands there with the female version of his defense team. I much preferred David Lynch just because Mark thought it was a hilarious name. And his female attorney, I just feel like it's in remarkably bad taste to have a female on his defense team. And I'm sure that that would be a move that would be calculated because it's like, well, this poor old man couldn't rape and murder all these women. Look, he has this lovely female defense attorney who wears the most crazy Southwest design outfits I ever seen in my life. I get it. If you're appearing in court, you don't always have to wear a navy blue business suit, but holy fuck shit, lady. I mean, she's got long hair, it's very kind of Earth Mother hippie bullshit. But the first time he appeared in court, it was like, what is she wearing? Like crazy prints. I understand this is not important. However, it is distracting and it's somewhat important. And then the second court appearance was with David Lynch, who, dude in a suit. And then Thursday's 90-second court appearance, she has on, I don't even know, it's like a Georgia O'Keeffe painting come to life.
Oh, lovely.
It's like bright orange, tomato orange red jacket with yellow chevron pattern. It just looks, the only thing missing is like an applique of a prairie dog on the back, like howling at the moon. It's literally the most creepy, bizarre Southwest-inspired outfit in the world. So she's standing next to him, and he's got on an orange jumpsuit. So they kind of match. It's very unattractive.
It's kind of autumn-esque.
Yes, and here we are in July, and they're wearing something very Southwest autumn-esque.
Maybe he'll cop his plea finally in around Halloween. Then the outfits will be appropriate.
I don't think everyone wears a Scream mask. No, I don't think so. And I think if he had his colors done, he is absolutely a winter. He does not belong in orange. Is not a good color for him. It is not. He is not a fall or a summer. So anyway. He stands there looking somewhat thinner in his short hearing. What was different this time is that there were more victims in the audience. And Debbie Domingo, Jane Carson Sandler, Margaret Wardlow, they had signs that said, now we are in control. We have the power. That was outside the courtroom. I don't know that they'd be allowed to hold them up.
They wouldn't
in
be
court,
allowed in
right?
the courthouse.
Right. But it was pretty interesting that it was packed a little bit more with more victims than his past two, which is nice. They understand that they're making a trip to come to this court proceeding, knowing that it probably will not net them much, but it's a beautiful show of solidarity that they're doing this together. So Jane Carson Sandler had really hoped to look him in the eye, but he just kept his back to all of them, never ever turning around. He just kind of is ushered into his cage and then ushered out. So his defense attorney requests, please bar the media from the courtroom. Blessedly, the judge was like, hey, you know what? Go fuck yourself and suck on my gavel. I don't know that he said it just like that.
No.
But he overruled that, so I'm really glad that he, is going to let the media continue to be in these court appearances. And quite frankly, I don't know that this is going to end up in Sacramento County. I think there's going to have to be a change of venue because there really isn't DNA evidence in Sacramento. other than the rapes, which are mostly all, way past their statute of limitations, which is another crime, as I feel like there should be absolutely no statute of limitations limit on rape. It should be the same as murder. So they'll probably end up moving it to Santa Barbara County, Ventura County, maybe Orange County, but truly doubtful. In my world, they'd move it to LA County because then they could say it was a fair venue because it's in between all of his victims.
And you try to weasel your way onto the jury, wouldn't you?
Oh, God, no. No. I would never want that responsibility. I just went through a week of calling in for jury duty, and I would never, but what if it were closer, if it was a drivable area, I would just be there every day. I would, shiv somebody, I'd shiv a bailiff in the ass to get into the courtroom just to see the proceedings. I would never want to be on this jury. Never. Which is another reason why he will never get a jury of his peers unless it's, 12 sociopathic serial killers. Now, how do you find that?
Right.
Yeah. How do you find a jury of that cocksucker's peers? Anyway, so that's what happened in court this week. And his next appearance is 2 months from now, sadly, September 5th. Right in the middle of the week. It's on a Wednesday. It's the Wednesday after Labor Day. So we'll all have the Labor Day weekend to rest up, and then he'll appear in court on the 5th and probably not make a plea. And hopefully his attorney will wear a really awesome outfit. But the other update for this week.
Oh, wait, I've got some news update. I found something on Google here. I don't know if it's going to work, but it says that I can play it. So
okay, go ahead.
I'm going to try it. Let's
All
see
right.
what. Hold on.
I kind of love it, and I feel very much like Ted Baxter
There
right
you
now.
go, right.
I really love that. That's really quite lovely. I
right.
wish we had done it before, but because this feels a little like,
You inspired me. You inspired me to find it.
I love it. I absolutely
They've
love
got
it.
like a bunch of different ones here, so we'll have to pick one.
Yeah, pick one. You were able to do it while I was recording this, which is great, which means you're not paying attention again. So anyway.
I can. Are you kidding? I can do two things at once.
Really? You want to go there?
No, let's not do that.
Okay. So the other piece of info with that fantastic news introduction, musical interlude, was that in 1983, October 6th, actually, Sharon Huddle filed a restraining order, a protective order against Joseph James D'Angelo. They had been separated since 1991 and lived in separate homes since 91. They'd been legally separated since 1991. So 2 years later, she files a protective order against him. Now, it's listed as a protective order without child protection. So meaning she didn't think the kids were in danger. Let's hope not, since she let him basically raise them by himself and live with them. But apparently she felt her life was in danger. Now
that's fascinating.
It is very.
That's good stuff.
And she's an attorney.
But she let him raise the kids, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. He was like a single dad.
I mean, a daughter.
3.
She let him raise 3 daughters.
And 1 granddaughter. One daughter and 1 granddaughter were living with him when he was arrested.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's so much more to come out in this whole thing.
Yeah, I'm guessing so. So here's the other odd part, and you might be able to speak to this legal eagle, Mark. It was, quote unquote, dismissed on April 24th of 2006. So for almost 13 complete years, she had a protective order against him. Now, what I have read is that sometimes protective orders molder in drawers in courthouses until one or the other of the parties acts on it, whether the person who is the addressee who says, I don't know why she needs a protective order against, or the addressor who says, okay, I can dismiss this now. I feel like my motion was heard and he has been served and blah, blah. So I don't know why he would have to have a protective order, a restraining order against him for 13 years, but it could have been that she did it for a specific reason at a specific time, and then it just didn't go anywhere, and she didn't act on it, and he didn't ask to have it removed, and then they found it in a drawer and then dismissed it because neither party had addressed it.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know, the legalities. It's just all of this is conjecture, but it's pretty fascinating that she had legally separated from him in 91 and then ended up filing a restraining order in, August of 93. Pretty weird. Doesn't get dismissed until 2006. Pretty weird. But that's the Golden State Killer update for this week, and there may not be anything else for a couple of months till
you got to play the outro then.
Oh my God, this is amazing. I love it with all my heart. I just feel so official now, as opposed to sitting in one of our guest bedrooms, talking into a puffy mic and trying not to pop my peas. I feel so, God, I'm going to start wearing a blue business suit.
Yeah, right.
All the time, and pearls.
That was Melissa Morgan from our Santa Clarita studios.
I thought you were going to call me the man on the street.
The man.
Yes. Okay. So, back to part 2 of the really fascinating West Mesa murder victims. It's still such a fascinating case, and it's, still open, even though some people think they know the answer and it should be closed. I'm not so sure. So the part 2 of the West Mesa murder victims is going to focus a little bit more on the victims and what law enforcement has been doing, as opposed to the horror of finding them during development and the excavating, and also the potential perpetrators. It's really kind of narrowed down to 4 or 5 people now. We know 3 of them. The other 2 may not be listed, but there are still missing women on retired Detective Ida Lopez's list. And that's another reason to bring awareness to this case. Some of the women that could be missing from the area could be alive and could be somewhere else, as opposed to having law enforcement look for them. Hopefully, maybe someone who knows something will see something, say something, know something, and you can always call us at Just the Tipsters at 832-JUST-THE-TIPSTERS, or you can always email us at jttipsters@gmail.com.
That's 832-TIPSTER.
Oh, sorry. I said tipsters because I actually know there's an extra letter, but when I say 832-tipster, I don't know, I feel like I'm making it singular as opposed to plural. Does that make sense? It doesn't matter.
Well, everybody who calls in is probably an individual tipster. So.
Okay, 832-tipster. Jesus Christ, you're fucking... Anyway, okay, so these are not in a particular order as to either how they were found or when they went missing. So a group of women, 11 that were found, and 1 4-month fetus of one of the victims were found in 2009 after a bone had worked its way above ground, and a woman was walking her dog, and her dog found the bone. And then within a month and a half, they'd found 11 adult victims and one child of one of the adult females. So there are 2 that are young, 15 years old. There are several that are not in the world of being a sex worker or potentially using drugs. But for the most part, it's beautiful Hispanic women between the ages of 15 and 24. But it's an interesting group of women, a very, very fascinating group of women. So Jamie Barella is 15, and she is with her 23-year-old cousin Evelyn Salazar. Now, another one of the things that's interesting about this grouping of women is that several of them, we don't have an exact date of when they went missing. because of their compromised lifestyle, because they potentially lived on the street or, were sex workers, didn't check in with family all that often. So some of them, we don't know when they went missing. We just know when they were found. We can narrow down a potential timeline, but it may not be, perfect. So in April of 2004, Jamie Barella, who's 15, and her 23-year-old cousin, Evelyn Salazar, are leaving their family reunion, probably bored, bunch of old grandparents sitting around, throwing hot sauce on shit or whatever. So they walk away. Well, I don't know. They walk away from their family reunion and said they're going to a park in San Mateo, which is, I guess, San Mateo and Gibson, which is a little area of Albuquerque. This is in Albuquerque, which, by the way, just today, got an alert on my phone saying Albuquerque has, for the second year in a row, been listed as the city with the highest level of auto theft. I was like, huh. All I can think of, it's hot, and maybe people are like, oh shit, I don't know what I was thinking trying to walk. I gotta jack that guy's car. He's got air conditioning.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just random people, I'm way too hot. I got to steal the car just for the AC.
Exactly. Well, that's just a theory. I'm not saying I'm, an expert. I'm just saying it's my theory. So they walk off together, and it's the last time that they're ever seen. So from April of 2004, they're never seen until both of them are found in the mass gravesite in West Mesa in February of 2009. Jamie was the final set of bones to be identified, and it was about a year after all of the bones had been found. Her mom thought she would absolutely be found way before it happened, and she knew something was obviously very wrong. She was not the kind of girl that would not call home, be home, and she had no ties to any sort of a, uncomfortable, difficult lifestyle, except for her, being very good friends with her cousin, Evelyn Salazar. So Evelyn and Jamie had left together. Evelyn is 23 and Jamie's 15. Evelyn is listed as the 10th victim to be identified next to her 15-year-old cousin. And she had been convicted of prostitution once. It's sort of well known that she was definitely, someone who was on the street and working as a sex worker, but still managed to go to her family reunion, be with her cousin, and then they end up together, unfortunately, in this mass grave. So Monica Candelaria is 21, and her friends reported to police in 2003 that they had heard rumors on the street that she's been killed and buried out on the mesa. And of course, they took these reports. I don't know if they investigated and couldn't find, any fresh graves, but her friends were right, and she was not found until 2009. She was sort of listed as having a high-risk lifestyle and had gang ties, meaning she had dated people who'd been in a gang, and she had been convicted of prostitution once. But it's very interesting that there are tips that come in that are true. There's always something that's kind of rumbling around the streets. That's why so many of these cases can be solved. And I am so very grateful for things like GEDmatch that, we can use DNA if any is found. It's an amazing thing. But quite frankly, most homicides are solved with good old-fashioned shoe leather. It's getting out there and pounding the streets and shaking people down because somebody says something. Somebody knows something. It may be something you thought was small, but I remember seeing that guy or that truck. All of these things add up, and they can really help, bring some never closure, but some sort of peace to these family members who have no idea what happened. And they have now each other, because there's a group of family members with missing, deceased women, and they don't know what happened and why. So that's why, I'm really hoping podcasts like this, amazing work done in newspapers. A lot of this information is coming from the Albuquerque Journal, which is just doing a Nobel Prize winning job of keeping the story front and center. They are just, the Albuquerque Journal has won my heart with the amount of coverage, the detailed amount of coverage, interviewing everyone. It's and getting everyone's thoughts, opinions, feelings. They just do an amazing job. So Victoria Chavez is 26, and she's the first person's bones who were identified after they were found on the mesa. And her stepfather, Ambrose Saez, said it at a memorial event in 2009. I just never thought it would end like this. I had hope. But Victoria's mother had reported her missing in March of 2005. But here, this is just heartbreaking. She had not heard from her daughter in more than a year. And, her mother knew that she was on probation, she was a known drug user and a sex worker, and she had 5 prostitution convictions, according to her court records. Now, not talking to your daughter in a year, you don't know when she went missing, but her first reported time of being missing is March of 2005, and we don't know when, eventually, if it will ever be known when she really went missing. So Virginia Cloven was born in a small town, not in Albuquerque, but in Las Chavez. And her dad, apparently they had a lot of kids and not a lot of room. And he said that Virginia had a great sense of humor. She would try to lie to you, but then she would come in and tell you the truth like a minute later because she just couldn't lie. And all of her teachers wanted to adopt her. So, tragedy had struck the family when Virginia was still in high school. Her brother was shot and killed in a homicide that, later on is ruled by the courts to be self-defense. So that did not bring them any closure, justice, peace. She ran away from home a week later when she was 17, and another brother in the family ran away too. They couldn't take it anymore with their brother's murder being considered self-defense, and they felt like they got no justice. So when she ran away, she said she was going to live with her grandfather in Albuquerque. And she did for a while, but then she ended up moving in with a boyfriend. So she got hit by a car, went into a coma, and when she came out of the coma, she had lost her home and had medical bills. So she ended up living on the streets in Albuquerque's International District.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So one year she called her dad and said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And he said, "I want you to clear up any tickets, citations you have, and I'll meet you in Albuquerque. I would love to see you. That would be my best birthday present. Clearing up your legal issues, and we'll start over." So they went to meet her on his birthday at court, and she showed up, and then she said, "Okay, let's meet at Grandpa's." But then she never showed up at Grandpa's, and after that, they never heard from her again. So her parents just wouldn't give up. They drove around the seedier parts of Albuquerque with her picture plastered all over their truck. They asked anyone they found, on a street anywhere, "Look, have you seen this girl? She's missing." They talked to her boyfriend, who the last time they'd heard from her with him was June of 2004, and she said, he just got out of prison and we're going to get married. But after that, nothing. So he reports her, that was June of 2004. Her dad, Robert Cloven, reports her missing in October of 2004, and she was 23 years old at the time. So this victim is different from the other victims. Solania Edwards, really heartbreaking story. She's the only African-American victim. She was 15, and she had become a runaway from foster care in Oklahoma. And I am just ignorant to the world of human trafficking, human sex trafficking, really ignorant to the world of this. So this was back in, 2004, 2005. She, was reported missing from Oklahoma from her foster care. She never knew her father. The last time she saw her mother, she was 5 years old. She's a beautiful girl. And they believe what she did was become hooked up with something called the circuit. And she was a circuit girl. And that means they travel along the I-40 corridor, being, farmed out as sex workers and human trafficking. Early on in the investigation of all of the women that went missing, a tipster did get a hold of the sheriff's department and said that I saw this girl in Denver in the spring and summer of 2004, and she was living in a motel on East Colfax Street in Denver. She was part of this traveling group. They received a lot of information about her and a few other females, and that she may have gone by aliases like Chocolate or Mimi. It's interesting that she is, the only African-American victim, and she is so very young. And the police released photographs of a design that was painted on her, a really distinct design painted on her fingernail. And they released pictures in Albuquerque and in Denver, hoping that someone who painted it, a nail tech who painted it, would come forward. But they haven't heard any information from anyone. Now, this next girl, her mother's name is Diana Wilhelm, and why she named her child Cinnamon, I don't know. But Cinnamon Elks did not call her mom on her birthday in August, and she knew something was really wrong, and it would take 5 years for the Albuquerque police to let Diana know that Cinnamon was one of the victims. She also was friends with 3 of the other victims, Gina Valdez, Victoria Chavez, and Julie Nieto, and she had 19 solicitation arrests and 14 convictions. So some of these girls worked together, knew each other, maybe took care of each other when they were on the street as sex workers, and some of them ended up together on the Mesa. So Doreen Marquez, she was fashionable, loved jewelry, had a huge personality, and she wasn't the girl who would just, pull her hair back and say, I'm going out today. She always did her makeup. She always looked gorgeous. She always cared about how she looked. She lived in Mesa her whole life, went to West Mesa High School. She was a cheerleader. She had 2 daughters. She had huge birthday parties for her daughters. But as her daughters got older, her boyfriend was in and out of jail, and she ended up turning to drugs. She ended up spending less and less time with her daughters and left them with other family members. And she went missing, and one of her sisters said, if you need a place to come, please come here. My door is always open. But she never came back. It's estimated that she's around 27 when she disappeared. It's a really awful thing to not know when someone went missing. I mean, if you think about it, sometimes I can't remember what I did 2 days ago. So when someone goes missing and you don't see them for a while, it's, it's really hard to narrow that down. So they think she was around 27 when she disappeared. So there's a police report saying that she was last identified and seen as dropping off her kids at school in 2003. But another friend said, oh, no, I saw her in a town called Bareilles. So she was, found on the Mesa. She did not have any public prostitution arrests, but the police believed that she was a sex worker nonetheless. Here, all these years later, her daughters go to Roswell and they decorate her grave with butterflies and wind chimes. It's the ones that are left that, you want to try and get these cases solved. It absolutely is not going to bring them closure, but it has to bring them. The not knowing is always going to be worse than the knowing. So if you can find out, what happened, why, and who, it's got to bring you a little bit of peace. So Julie Nieto, she was very tiny. She'd always been small for her age. Her mom would alter her clothes because even the smalls were, too large for her. So her mom said she really thinks she started doing drugs when she was 19. And she took her to treatment several times. It just didn't stick. Her mom, Eleanor Griego, said she saw her for the last time when she was 23 in August of 2004 at her grandfather's house, at Eleanor Griego's father's house. She had a son. She left the son. And her mother, Eleanor Griego, said she doted over that boy. She was a great mother. She wouldn't let him go. And when she never came back, he cried and cried and cried for her. So...
oh, God, some of this stuff is just...
I'm sorry.
Man, it just breaks your heart.
Yes, it does. So 2 years after... this won't make you feel any better. 2 years after she went missing, her sister Valerie was found dead in a motel from overdose. She couldn't handle it. It was the only sister she'd ever had. She was crying all the time, and she couldn't handle it, and she died of an overdose. So it was not long after that Eleanor Griego found out that Julie, her daughter, was one of the girls found on the Mesa. And she said, I just collapsed. I had just buried one daughter, and then they found another one. So now Eleanor Griego is raising Julie Nieto's son and her daughter Valerie, who died of the overdose, her son. So now she's raising both of her daughter's kids. Now, Julie was charged with prostitution and convicted 4 times, according to records. Valerie was just, couldn't handle the grief of losing her sister, so she turned to drugs, which is heartbreaking. Veronica Romero was 27, and she was reported missing by her family on Valentine's Day of 2004, and they found her July of 2009, and she was finally laid to rest. Michelle Valdez, her father sort of became the spokesperson for this group of family members who were left with the lost girls, as Detective Ida Lopez called them. So the last time Dan Valdez saw Michelle Valdez, his daughter, he said, don't stay away too long this time. And she walked up to him and put her arms around him and said, no, Dad, I want you to hug me really hard and tight. He said it seemed that she knew something was going to happen. So Michelle had a daughter that she cared for deeply, and she had a huge heart. And Dan Valdez was just completely enamored with his daughter and granddaughter. He said she was such an amazing girl. She would give you the shirt off her back. She was such a good-hearted, kind person, and she did not deserve what happened to her. He said he couldn't remember exactly when she got involved in drugs. He said sometimes she would disappear for days, and then it became for weeks, and then it became for months at a time. And when she did show up, he would give her just small amounts of money, and he said he knew it would eventually go to drugs, but he hoped that if he just gave her a little bit, she would always just come back to him. And eventually she stopped coming back in February of 2005, and she was 22 years old. So her bones were the second set to be identified in February, and she was also the one who was pregnant with a 4-month-old unborn baby. She had been convicted of prostitution only once, and her mother said, she should not be defined by drug addiction. She's still a human being. She was an amazing big sister. She was an amazing family member. She was a great mom who cared about her kids' accomplishments. She had, 2 younger sisters that she loved and took care of, and she had a son and a daughter. She, when she was younger, had dreamed about becoming a singer and maybe even a lawyer like one of her aunts. And her mother said, drug addiction wasn't the lifestyle she wanted. She really wanted help, but she didn't have the money or insurance, so it was hard for her to get it. And Dan Valdez, her dad, is really the spokesman for the group of family members who have missing, lost girls. But he got sick in 2004, and he died in he got sick in 2014 with liver problems and cancer. And he died in January of 2015. And he was, he at least knew where his daughter was, but he's waiting. He was, waiting for the police to find her killer. And he said, I wish we had more answers, and we all meet our maker in the end, knowing he was sick. He said, but we'll get our justice, maybe not here on earth, but we'll get our justice. And I know that's what they're working toward. So, an amazing excerpts from an interview with the Albuquerque Journal on the West Mesa case. This was just in February of this year. And there's an interim police chief, and his name is Mike Geyer. He was also the one who was interviewed in July 3rd when they found a set of remains near the mesa, but those turned out to be ancient Native American remains. They were not any part of the West Mesa Lost Girls. So he was a detective at the time that they started finding the bodies in 2009, and he is now the interim police chief. And he talks about this case any chance he gets, and the Albuquerque Journal is just couldn't be more in love with their coverage. It's amazing. So he had led a violent crimes unit and a task force that was actually involved in investigating the deaths of the 11 women and the one unborn fetus back in 2009. He says, I can't believe that no one knew. Somebody else had to hear it in a bar, somebody bragging. Somebody saw something on the street. A family member saw something weird at the time. They didn't associate it with what was going on. But now that everything has come to light, this is just really what we're hoping for. This was not a fluke. Sometimes the least significant tip that we get is the one that breaks it open. All the ones that are like, oh, it's this, or this is the right track, all of those things fizzle out. You just never know. But if you saw something, say something, years of experience at this job, I just can't discount anything. The witnesses who seem like they're full of crap, sometimes they're the one. And I love the way he's just a straight shooter. He doesn't pull punches. He's actively begging for help, for tips. Somebody knows something. For some reason, that person never came forward. But none of this happened in a vacuum. Someone knows something. So on the victims' families, he said, I think they found a sense of solidarity and oneness having lost someone in the same circumstances. So I think it kind of helped them have that support system at the time. And I really don't want them to think that the police ever forgot. They were sometimes angry at us and frustrated with the fact that the wheels were spinning but nothing was happening. And I cannot blame them. I'd feel the same way. It's one thing to know that someone in your family has died, but you would like to know all the facts and what they went through. And I'm sure sometimes they blame themselves. Could I have done more? I think we all do that. And I would like to say to them, you can't blame yourself. You know, people make their own choices. And apparently they made counseling available to the family members. And he said the counselors told them all this as well. So family members, you know, I'm sure Dan Valdez was thinking, I shouldn't have given her money for drugs. I'm sure every family member can go back and say they should have done something different. But the thing is, they were living their lives. And, you know, Chief Geyer is right. We all make our decisions in our lives, and sometimes they're not the great decisions, and sometimes we get out of it okay, and sometimes we don't. So on the fact that it's a cold case, I was really fascinated to hear this, and I don't know if a cold case is qualified differently in different states, but Chief Geyer says it's a formal classification that typically after a year, if there's no active suspects, a detective may classify it a cold case if they're working on it and they don't have anywhere else to go. They'll give it a cold case classification, and then it goes into the cold case unit. Sometimes they check them once a month to see if there's something new they missed. Sometimes they'll give them to someone new, a fresh set of eyes to look at something. Sometimes it'll be 10 to 15 years before someone looks at it again. But, you know, there were so many people, according to Chief Geyer, offering opinions, you know, like that it was a long-distance truck driver. Everyone had a different perspective. And Chief Geyer says, I think we would have seen that somewhere along the line if something that solid had popped up, and it didn't. So the difficulty is in investigating this case. Chief Geyer says, normally if your son or daughter goes missing a couple days, you get concerned and you call. But because of the unfortunate lifestyle that some of the victims had, you may not know where they are. You weren't as close to your family members. Some family members couldn't do anything, couldn't even find a way to contact them, couldn't put down solid timelines of where they were. So working backwards when someone is missing is hard enough. Working backwards when you don't have solid contact with someone, it has to just be mind-numbing. I mean, you know, he used as an example, where were you at 3 o'clock yesterday? Some people could answer that right away. Some people would have to sit and think about that. I would have to sit and think. And, you know, Chief Geyer said they don't have that person to ask or talk to, so they can't refute any alibis or timelines. It's a difficult investigation, to say the least. So about the burial site, he says, you know, this didn't happen overnight. It was something that the perpetrator kept going back to. There was really limited access out there. You know, the middle of the mesa is a pretty good place to hide things. You didn't just find that place by accident. You know, were a kid who went out there and shot BB guns or shot rabbits with your .22. You know, you were somebody who took your beers and went out there to drink and party. A lot of things have, you know, changed over the last 15 years. There, you know, are roadways that weren't there back then. You know, you found people who hunted there. You know, you looked at every angle that you could in law enforcement, but you know, that's where you would go to get away from everything, where you didn't want someone to see you. So it's hard to find witnesses, people who knew where it was or would admit that they knew where it was. And as Chief Geyer says, you can't find that many places in Metro Albuquerque anymore, you know, because there aren't that many places like that left, which makes him believe that the perpetrator stayed local for a reason, because it's his stomping grounds. That's why he thinks it's someone that's connected to Albuquerque. That's why he thinks the long-distance truck driver theory, or out-of-town, serial killer just doesn't really play out for him. He just definitely thinks it's someone local. So there's, also a theory that there's a second burial site, that this one got full. And Chief Geyer says, my biggest fear is that there is a second burial site somewhere and we can't access it because it's been developed.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought of that.
It's a heartbreaking thing to think about that. He said, it's a big state. If you go outside of Albuquerque, there's a lot of open space. If you're going, through Route 40, there's a lot of different areas that could have been connected. They took search dogs and found a lot of false positives, but it ended up being, cow bones and dog bones and stuff like that. It didn't go anywhere. So they have not found a second burial site, but he's not closing his mind off to that, which is, good that he's keeping an open mind. So the pattern of a particular killer, he feels like could have changed over time. He thinks he could have gone from being very disorganized to finding a pattern that he could do something with, meaning lining them up on the mesa. And it's a place where he would have felt safe and comfortable. That's what serial killers usually do. They find something that makes them feel comfortable. After the first time you do this, there's an excitement, from profilers. That's what he's understood, that, and what goes through their mind really isn't specifically what can I, how can I take care of this, but how do I not get caught? It's always about self-preservation. So they don't have, emotion toward their victim or what anyone else thinks. He feels like it could have been a very disorganized pattern at first, after that first taste of blood, but then he, changed his pattern and became, much more stealthy at burying bodies, getting rid of bodies. It's kind of amazing. So he thinks that there are, definite connections to all of the victims. He said, I think if you ask Detective Ida Lopez, she's going to say in her heart she thinks they're connected somehow. He doesn't answer the question. It's like, do you think they're connected? They knew each other. They all just knew the perpetrator. He doesn't answer the question. But he says there were definite commonalities. There's no doubt about it. There are some differences. But he also thinks that on Ida Lopez's list, there could be women that are still alive. And, they could come back and say, I didn't know that you were looking for me. I didn't know you thought I was dead. So that's another reason why covering these cases, if someone's hearing this, and thinks, oh, I was in Albuquerque in the mid-2000s. I, may have had a boyfriend in a gang. I might have used drugs and I moved out of the area because my family couldn't handle me. If you were in that area, if you're ever hearing this, or if you know someone who may be considered missing, contact the Albuquerque Journal if you don't want to call the sheriff's department. I mean, Detective Ida Lopez, who was really the touchstone for the families for so many years, had retired, but she didn't stay retired long. She came back, and she's a consultant on the case. You can get a hold of her. If you have access to go online, you can go online at the library, and it gives you I've, looked up this information myself. There's a contact number for Detective Lopez. There's a contact number for the cold case unit. You could get a hold of someone and say, you know what, I might be someone on your list. I just want you to know I'm alive. I'm here. And, don't worry about me anymore. Keep looking for someone else. It's just, she has a very long list, and these 11 women were not the only people on it. So it is amazing. So Chief Geyer says, obviously one of the reasons he wants this solved is to chalk one up for the good guys. He wants to get it off the books, but that's not the important part. The important part, he knows there's no closure for the family. They're still going to wonder what happened to their baby, what happened to their daughter, what happened to their possible unborn grandchild. you want to know what happened, and he wants them to know we're not ever going to give up, and we're going to keep hope. And, this case is on everyone's mind. And he also says for the police department, it would be positive for sure. And their efforts, if they paid off, that would be a great thing. But he thinks Albuquerque has taken a beating that it doesn't deserve. They're, the highest in the crime rate. They're the highest in this. Just like I said today, they're second year in a row, highest in auto theft. He said they're lowest in the things they should be high in. But he thinks it would be a wonderful victory for the community to get this closed. It would make a better place to live, to raise the next generation of families and kids. And that would always be a good thing. So if you know something, say something. And more cowbell.
And if you know something, please call the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 1-832-847-7837. Or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com.